Waiter refuses to serve homeless man, but when he unmasks, the restaurant shuts down. It was a chilly autumn afternoon, and the streets of downtown Manhattan buzzed with the usual lunchtime crowd. Suited professionals hurried from one meeting to the next, their coffee cups in hand, while tourists wandered aimlessly, snapping photos of the towering buildings. In the midst of the bustling scene, a man in ragged clothes entered one of the city's most upscale restaurants, Le Grand Étoile, a place known for its exclusive clientele and exorbitantly priced dishes. The man's coat was worn and frayed, his shoes scuffed from years of wear. He carried a tattered bag slung over his shoulder and glanced around the opulent dining room with calm curiosity. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, and white linen-covered tables stretched across the space. The clinking of fine silverware and the murmur of conversations filled the air. He took a few steps inside, the polished marble floor cool beneath his feet. Immediately, heads turned. Guests whispered to one another, their eyes darting toward the unexpected visitor. The maitre d', a tall man with a meticulously groomed mustache, froze in place, his gaze narrowing. The man approached the front desk, offering a warm smile. "Good afternoon. I'd like a table for one, please." The maitre d' raised an eyebrow, scanning the man from head to toe. His voice dripped with disdain. "Sir, I'm afraid we're fully booked for the day." The man looked around the half-empty restaurant, his expression calm. "It seems like there are a few open tables?" The maitre d' bristled. "Those are reserved for our regular guests. I'm afraid we can't accommodate walk-ins without proper attire." The man nodded slowly, as if processing the rejection. "I see. Well, I don't mind waiting." "Sir," the maitre d' said, his voice rising, "perhaps it would be best if you tried one of the cafes down the street. This restaurant has a dress code." By now, several diners were openly watching the exchange, their expressions a mix of curiosity and amusement. Some whispered behind their hands, speculating about who the man might be. At that moment, the head waiter, a stern man named Philippe, approached with a scowl. "What's going on here?" he demanded. "This gentleman," the maitre d' said, struggling to maintain his composure, "was just about to leave." The man tilted his head, a faint smile playing at the corners of his lips. "Actually, I'd still like a table. I'm sure your chef wouldn't mind cooking for me." Philippe crossed his arms. "Listen, we have a reputation to uphold. We don't serve just anyone who walks in off the street. Please leave before we call security." The man remained calm, reaching into his pocket. "Are you sure you want me to leave?" he asked quietly. Philippe scoffed. "Yes, I'm sure." The man pulled out a sleek black phone and tapped the screen a few times. Within seconds, the maitre d's phone buzzed on the counter. He glanced at the screen, his face turning pale. Philippe frowned, leaning in to see what had caused the sudden reaction. The message was short but unmistakable: "Let him stay." Immediately, before Philippe could process what was happening, the man reached up and pulled off the hood of his coat, revealing a face that was instantly recognizable. Gasps echoed around the restaurant. It was Elon Musk. The silence that followed was deafening. Philippe's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The maitre d' looked as though he might faint. Elon smiled politely. "I believe you mentioned you were fully booked?" The maitre d' stumbled over his words. "Mr. Musk. I had no idea. Please, forgive me. We'll prepare the best table for you right away." Philippe took a step back, his confidence shattered. "Of course. Right this way, sir. I'll personally see to it that your meal is perfect." Elon held up a hand. "No need for the sudden change in attitude. I think I'll stay here at the front for a moment. You know, give everyone a chance to reflect on how they treat people who don't look the part." The other diners sat frozen, their gazes locked on Elon. A few of them whispered apologies, clearly embarrassed for having judged him moments earlier. The maitre d' looked as though he might melt into the floor. "Mr. Musk, I assure you, this is not how we usually treat our guests." Elon raised an eyebrow. "Really? Because it seemed pretty natural to me." Philippe stepped forward, desperate to salvage the situation. "Please, allow us to make this right." Elon took a deep breath. "There's only one way to make it right. Close the restaurant for the rest of the day and offer free meals to anyone who walks in." No dress code, no reservations, just good food and respect for everyone, no matter how they look? The maitre d' blinked in disbelief. Close the restaurant? You heard me, Elon said calmly. I'll cover the expenses. But if you really want to make things right, show some generosity. Treat people with kindness, not judgment. For a moment, it seemed as though the maitre d' would refuse. Then, slowly he nodded. Very well. Elon turned to face the room. Enjoy your meal, everyone. And remember, appearances can be deceiving. With that, he walked toward the door, leaving Philippe and the maitre d' scrambling to implement his instructions. As he stepped back onto the street, Elon couldn't help but smile. He had made his point. The maitre d' stood frozen, watching Elon disappear into the crowded street. For a moment, silence hung heavy in the restaurant. Then, a wave of murmurs spread across the room as diners began whispering excitedly to one another. Was that really Elon Musk? I can't believe it. He was just sitting there, and they refused to serve him. They're actually going to close the restaurant and give away free meals? The weight of what had just happened hit Philippe like a punch to the gut. His face was pale, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Did he really mean we have to give away free meals to anyone who walks in? He muttered, looking at the maitre d'. The maitre d' rubbed his temples, panic setting in. We don't have a choice. If we refuse, the backlash will be enormous. And worse, he'll make sure of it. Before they could debate further, the front door swung open. A man in a worn coat and a wool cap stood hesitantly in the doorway, his eyes darting nervously between the maitre d' and Philippe. Is it true? Are you offering free meals today? Philippe swallowed hard, glancing at the maitre d', who gave a resigned nod. Yes, sir. Please come in. The man's face lit up with surprise and gratitude. Thank you. I haven't had a hot meal in days. The maitre d' guided him to a table, suddenly more gracious than ever. Please, take a seat. We'll bring you our best dishes. Within minutes, word spread like wildfire. People from all walks of life began trickling into the restaurant. Homeless individuals seeking warmth, families struggling to make ends meet, curious bystanders who had heard about the unexpected generosity. Soon, the once half-empty restaurant was filled to capacity, every table bustling with laughter and conversation. Philippe, who had been reluctant at first, found himself oddly moved by the sight. The usual stiff atmosphere of Le Grand Étoile was gone, replaced by something far more genuine. He watched as a mother fed her two children, their faces lighting up as they tasted dishes they'd never have been able to afford otherwise. Across the room, an elderly man shared stories with a group of college students, their laughter ringing through the air. For the first time in years, the restaurant felt truly alive. Meanwhile, Elon watched the scene unfold from a nearby cafe, sipping a coffee as he scrolled through his phone. News of the incident had already hit social media. Photos and videos captured by diners were spreading rapidly, accompanied by captions like, Elon Musk shuts down elitist restaurant after they refuse to serve him. Homeless man or billionaire. Don't judge a book by its cover. Le Grand Étoile learns a valuable lesson in humility today. Elon smiled to himself, knowing the message would resonate far beyond the walls of that restaurant. This wasn't just about him. It was about changing perspectives and breaking down barriers. Too often, people were judged based on appearances, treated as less than simply because they didn't fit a certain mold. Today had been an opportunity to remind everyone that kindness and respect shouldn't be reserved for the privileged few. His phone buzzed with a message from his assistant. You've gone viral again. Press wants a statement. Elon chuckled and typed a quick response. No statement needed. The message is clear enough. Back at the restaurant, the chaos of the impromptu event had settled into a warm, communal vibe. Philippe found himself helping in ways he never thought he would, pouring water, chatting with guests, and even delivering plates to tables with a genuine smile. The transformation was undeniable. The maitre d', now visibly more relaxed, approached Philippe. I have to admit, he said quietly, this isn't what I expected. But it feels good. Seeing everyone so happy, so grateful, it's humbling. Philippe nodded. Maybe we needed this. We got too caught up in status and exclusivity. We forgot what hospitality is really about. They stood together, watching as a group of children laughed over plates of pasta, their joy contagious. For the first time in a long while, Philippe felt like he was part of something meaningful, something bigger than just serving expensive food to wealthy patrons. As the last guest left that evening, the staff gathered in the now quiet dining room, exhausted but exhilarated. The maitre d' looked around at his team, his expression serious but grateful. I know today was unconventional, but we learned an important lesson. Moving forward, we need to rethink how we treat people. Every person who walks through that door deserves our kindness and respect. The staff nodded in agreement, many of them still processing the whirlwind day. Philippe couldn't help but wonder how things might have gone differently if Elon hadn't unmasked himself. How many opportunities for kindness had they missed simply because someone didn't fit their expectations? The next morning, headlines dominated the news. Elon Musk's social experiment shocks high-end restaurant. From exclusion to empathy, a new beginning for Le Grand Étoile ***. Billionaire's disguise sparks citywide conversation on kindness and equality. Requests for interviews poured in, but the restaurant decided to focus on their newfound mission. Inspired by Elon's challenge, they launched a weekly event called Open Table Night, offering free meals to those in need and partnering with local shelters to ensure that no one in the community went hungry. Philippe found himself at the center of this transformation, working closely with organizations he had once barely acknowledged. The experience changed him, opening his eyes to a world he had ignored for too long. One evening, as he locked up the restaurant after an open table night, Philippe spotted a man standing on the sidewalk, watching quietly. It was Elon. "Mr. Musk," Philippe called out, walking over. "I didn't expect to see you here." Elon smiled. "Just wanted to see how things were going." Philippe nodded, a grateful smile spreading across his face. "Better than ever. You gave us a wake-up call, one we desperately needed." "Thank you." Elon extended his hand, and Philippe shook it firmly. "Sometimes, all it takes is a little shake-up to remind us of what really matters," Elon said. "Keep up the good work." With that, Elon turned and disappeared into the night, leaving Philippe standing there, a newfound sense of purpose filling his heart. He knew one thing for certain: Le Grand Étoile would never be the same again. The transformation at Le Grand Étoile became a citywide sensation almost overnight. The once exclusive restaurant, known for catering to the city's wealthiest, had evolved into a beacon of hope and inclusivity. Media outlets ran stories about the restaurant's weekly open table night, where anyone, regardless of their financial situation, could enjoy a meal without judgment. It wasn't just a marketing stunt, it had become a movement. Philippe and the maitre d' quickly adapted to their new roles, partnering with local shelters and outreach programs to keep the initiative going. What had once been a cold, intimidating establishment was now a place filled with laughter, warmth, and stories shared over hearty meals. Philippe found himself thriving in this new environment. Instead of focusing on the pedigree of the guests or their designer clothing, he found joy in meeting people from all walks of life. He learned their stories, some heartbreaking, others inspiring, and every night he went home feeling more fulfilled than he ever had in his years as a waiter. One night, during an especially busy open table night, a young woman named Claire entered the restaurant, clutching a worn backpack to her chest. Her eyes darted nervously around the room until Philippe approached her with a warm smile. "Welcome," he said. "You're just in time. Can I find you a seat?" Claire hesitated, her fingers tightening around the straps of her backpack. "I don't want to bother anyone," she said softly. "I just heard about this place and I haven't eaten a proper meal in a while." Philippe gestured toward a cozy table near the window. "No bother at all. Come sit down. What would you like to eat?" "Tonight's special is beef stew with fresh bread." Claire's eyes lit up. "That sounds amazing." As Philippe brought her the steaming bowl of stew, he couldn't help but notice how carefully she savored each bite. It was as if every spoonful carried a memory, something deeper than just food. When she finished, she wiped her mouth with a napkin and looked up, her eyes filled with emotion. "Thank you," she said. "You have no idea how much this means to me. A few months ago, I lost my job and my apartment. Things have been hard. But tonight, I feel human again." I feel seen. Philippe sat down across from her, his heart heavy but grateful for her honesty. That's exactly why we do this. No one should feel invisible. You're always welcome here. Claire nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears. I'll come back, if that's okay. It's more than okay, Philippe said warmly. We'd love to see you again. Meanwhile, the ripple effect of Le Grand Etoile's transformation was felt far beyond the city. Restaurants in other cities started adopting similar initiatives, offering free meals or hosting community nights where everyone was treated equally. Social media exploded with hashtags like #OpenTableMovement and #KindnessFirst, inspiring people everywhere to think differently about how they treated those around them. Elon watched from a distance, pleased but unsurprised. He had seen the power of small acts of kindness before and knew how far they could go. What had started as a simple experiment to challenge biases had become something far more profound. A blueprint for change. One evening, while sitting in his office, Elon received an unexpected call from Philippe. Mr. Musk, Philippe began, his voice steady but serious. I just wanted to thank you again. None of this would have happened without you. But I also wanted to ask, what's next? You've inspired us to change the way we think about hospitality. Do you have another challenge for us? Elon leaned back in his chair, a thoughtful smile forming on his lips. What's next, huh? That's a good question. How about we take this even further? Philippe paused. Further how? Imagine if every restaurant in the city adopted some version of Open Table Night, Elon said. Imagine what kind of community we could build. One where no one goes hungry, where every business plays a role in supporting those in need. It doesn't have to be just food. It could be clothing, shelter, job opportunities. The possibilities are endless. Philippe felt a surge of excitement. I love that idea. We could start by partnering with more local businesses. Maybe host resource nights where people can get more than just a meal, things like job counseling, free health checkups, and connections to social services. Exactly, Elon said. You're thinking big now. And once this city does it, others will follow. Over the next few months, Le Grand Etoile became more than just a restaurant. It was a hub for community support. On some nights, local doctors volunteered their time, offering free health consultations. On other nights, career coaches helped people prepare resumes and practice for job interviews. What had begun as a reaction to one act of exclusion had blossomed into a full-scale movement. Claire, the young woman Philippe had welcomed months earlier, returned frequently, not just for meals but to volunteer. She became a central figure at the restaurant, using her experience to help others find their footing. One evening, as the last few guests were leaving, Claire approached Philippe with a bright smile. I got a job, she announced. A real one. I start next week? Philippe beamed. That's incredible, Claire. What will you be doing? Administrative work at a nonprofit, she said. It's not glamorous, but it feels meaningful. And it's all thanks to you in this place. Philippe shook his head. It's thanks to you. We just gave you a little support. You did the hard work. Claire laughed. Still, I wouldn't be here without Le Grand Etoile. By the end of the year, the success of Open Table Night had reached national news. Major networks covered the story, praising the initiative for redefining what hospitality could be. Philippe and the maitre d' were invited to speak at conferences, sharing their journey and encouraging other businesses to think beyond profit margins. But the true victory wasn't in the headlines or the accolades. It was in the lives that had been changed. It was in the man who found shelter and safety for the first time in years. It was in the single mother who received help preparing for a job interview and secured a stable future for her children. It was in Claire's transformation from a struggling young woman to a confident leader in her community. And it was in the quiet moments, when the restaurant doors closed for the night, and Philippe stood in the empty dining room, reflecting on everything they had accomplished. He knew the journey wasn't over. There were still countless people out there who needed a place to feel safe, a place to be seen. As he turned off the lights and locked the door, Philippe made a promise to himself. Le Grand Etoile would continue to be that place, for as long as it was needed. In the months that followed, Le Grand Etoile became a symbol of hope and second chances. What once was a place reserved for the city's elite had grown into something far more meaningful, a beacon of kindness that brought people together, regardless of their backgrounds or fortunes. The restaurant's transformation inspired other businesses across the country to join the movement. One by one, restaurants, cafes, and even retail stores began adopting their own versions of Open Table Night, offering services to those in need. Claire quickly emerged as one of the most influential voices in this growing community. Once a guest at Open Table Night, she had now become its unofficial spokesperson. Her story of resilience was featured in several news outlets, and her passion for helping others made her a sought-after speaker at community events. She worked closely with Philippe and the maitre d', organizing special nights where guests could receive not only a meal but also access to vital resources, everything from job counseling to free legal advice. One evening, Le Grand Étoile was particularly lively. A local jazz band played in the corner, their soft melodies filling the space. Children laughed and ran between the tables, while groups of people sat together, sharing food and stories. Philippe moved through the room with ease, greeting guests and making sure everyone felt welcome. He stopped at a table where Claire was sitting with a young couple and their toddler. "Everything okay here?" he asked with a warm smile. Claire nodded. "Perfect as always. Thank you." The young couple looked up, gratitude shining in their eyes. "We just wanted to say, thank you," the man said. "This place has been a lifesaver for us. When we lost our home, we didn't know where to turn. But this restaurant, it gave us hope." Philippe's chest tightened with emotion. "I'm glad we could help. You're always welcome here." As he walked away, he couldn't help but marvel at how far they had come. It wasn't just about food anymore. It was about rebuilding lives, offering a lifeline to those who felt forgotten. A week later, an email arrived in Philippe's inbox that would take the initiative to an entirely new level. It was from a representative of a global nonprofit organization, inviting Le Grand Étoile to participate in an international summit on social innovation and community impact. The summit, held in Geneva, would bring together leaders from around the world to discuss solutions for some of society's most pressing challenges. Philippe immediately shared the news with Claire and the maitre d'. "This is it," he said, excitement bubbling in his voice. "This is our chance to take what we've built here and share it on a global scale." Claire's eyes lit up. "Imagine the impact we could have. If other cities, other countries, adopted similar programs, we could change lives everywhere." Preparations for the summit began quickly. They compiled data, gathered testimonials, and created presentations showcasing the real-world impact of Open Table Night. By the time they boarded the flight to Geneva, their hearts were full of hope and anticipation. The summit was held in a grand convention center, its sprawling halls filled with delegates, activists, and innovators from every corner of the globe. Philippe, Claire, and the maitre d' were given a prime spot on the agenda, their presentation scheduled for the second day. As they took the stage, the room fell silent. The spotlight shone brightly on Philippe as he began to speak, his voice steady but filled with passion. "Good afternoon," he said. "My name is Philippe, and I'm here to share a story about how a single act of kindness transformed not just a restaurant but an entire community." He told the audience about the day Elon Musk walked into Le Grand Étoile, the harsh rejection he faced, and how that moment became the catalyst for change. He described the birth of Open Table Night and the countless lives it had touched since its inception. "But this isn't just our story," Philippe continued, his eyes scanning the audience. "It's a story that belongs to everyone. Because kindness and compassion aren't bound by borders or cultures. They're universal. And if we can create change in one small corner of the world, imagine what we can achieve together." The room erupted in applause, the sound filling every corner of the hall. Claire stepped forward next, sharing her personal journey and how Le Grand Étoile had given her the chance to rebuild her life. By the time she finished, many in the audience were wiping away tears. The response was overwhelming. Delegates approached them afterward, eager to learn more and implement similar programs in their own countries. The momentum was undeniable. Back in New York, Le Grand Étoile was buzzing with activity when Philippe, Claire, and the maitre d' returned. They barely had time to unpack before diving back into their work. The international attention had brought even more support, and with it, new challenges. But they embraced every obstacle with the same determination that had fueled them from the beginning. They expanded their network, collaborating with local farms to reduce food waste and offer fresh produce to their guests. New volunteers joined daily, eager to be part of something bigger than themselves. One evening, as Philippe stood by the door, watching the bustling dining room, he felt a hand on his shoulder. It was Claire, her eyes sparkling with joy. "Look at what we've built," she said softly. "It's more than I ever imagined." Philippe nodded, his heart swelling with pride. "It's only the beginning." As the night wore on and the last guests began to leave, Philippe took one final look around the room. It was no longer just a restaurant. It was a community, a place where people found hope, healing, and a second chance. And in that moment, he knew that Le Grand Étoile would continue to shine, illuminating paths for those who needed it most.